April 17, 1961. Vienna, Austria. Quincy Ziegler pulled his coat tighter as he stepped out of the American embassy into the brisk morning air. The news of the Bay of Pigs fiasco had reached him just hours earlier. Another CIA operation gone to hell, and the repercussions would be felt across every station in Europe. As a mid-level diplomatic attaché, his official cover, Quincy knew the Soviets would be watching more closely than ever. He checked his watch. 7:42 a.m. Perfect timing for his morning constitutional, a predictable pattern established over the 3 years he'd been posted to Vienna. Predictability bred invisibility. The KGB surveillance teams grew complacent with routines, and complacency created opportunities. The Graben was already bustling with early shoppers and businessmen. Quincy stopped at the same cafe he visited every Monday, ordered his usual coffee, and pretended to read the newspaper while he conducted his mental inventory of surveillance detection. The elderly man with the walking stick? He'd seen him twice before, but Vienna was a city of routine. The woman in the blue coat at the newsstand? New face. He'd watch her. His coffee arrived, brought by the same waitress who always worked Monday mornings. "Danke," he said, offering his practiced Austrian accent. Vienna had become home, more than Washington ever was. His apartment on Singerstrasse felt more familiar than the Maryland house where he'd grown up. Sometimes he wondered if the real Quincy Ziegler even existed anymore beneath the layers of his diplomatic persona. The front page of his newspaper showed Kennedy looking haggard. The president was taking the blame for the Cuba disaster, but Quincy knew the real story was far messier. Intelligence work always was. His thoughts turned to his upcoming meeting with the asset codenamed Woodlark, an Austrian physicist with connections to the Soviet scientific community. Low-level information, but reliable. The kind that built careers slowly rather than in dramatic leaps. As he folded his newspaper and placed his payment on the table, Quincy had no idea his comfortable routine was about to be shattered completely. 3 days later, Quincy stood before the door of St. Stephen's Cathedral, ostensibly admiring the architecture while waiting for his contact. The spring weather had warmed considerably, tourists now filling the square. Better cover for what he was about to do. A man in a gray suit approached, guidebook in hand, the recognition signal they'd established. Quincy tensed. This wasn't Woodlark. The man was older, heavier, with the unmistakable bearing of Eastern Bloc military training poorly disguised beneath civilian clothes. "Beautiful day to appreciate history, yes?" the stranger said in accented English, the correct phrase. Quincy gave the countersign. "History hides in plain sight." "Walk with me," the man said. "My name is Petrovich. Woodlark is no longer available to you." Quincy maintained his casual demeanor despite the alarm bells ringing in his head. Unavailable temporarily or permanently? He was found in his apartment 2 days ago. Heart attack, very unfortunate for a man of 52. The practiced neutrality in Petrovich's voice told Quincy everything he needed to know. Woodlark had been eliminated. "And you're telling me this why?" Quincy kept his voice level. "Because I have something of much greater value than Woodlark's scientific gossip." They walked toward the less crowded side streets, away from the main square. Every instinct told Quincy to break contact, report back to the station chief. Unplanned meetings with unknown Russians were textbook traps. "I'm not in the market for new information sources," Quincy said. "Not even when it concerns Operation Switchback?" Quincy nearly missed a step. Switchback was a classified NATO contingency plan for the rapid deployment of tactical nuclear weapons in the event of a Soviet advance through the Fulda Gap. Knowledge of its existence was limited to those with the highest security clearances. "I don't know what you're talking about," Quincy recovered. "And this conversation is over." Petrovich grabbed his arm as he turned away. $50 million, Mr. Ziegler. "Excuse me?" That's what your government spent building the facility. A remarkable achievement of engineering. Hidden for so long. I think you've mistaken me for someone else, Quincy said, extracting his arm from the man's grip. Schönbrunn Palace, Petrovich said. Tomorrow, noon, near the Neptune fountain. Come alone or don't come, but you'll want to hear the rest. He turned and walked away, disappearing into a group of tourists. Quincy stood frozen. Protocol dictated he report this immediately. An unscheduled contact, knowledge of classified operations, and the death of an asset all pointed to a major security breach. But something held him back. $50 million. A facility. The certainty in the Russian's voice suggested this wasn't a fishing expedition. As he made his way back to the embassy, Quincy couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched from multiple angles. The game had changed, and he didn't know the new rules. You met with an unauthorized Soviet contact and didn't report it for 24 hours? Station Chief Roland Bennett's voice remained dangerously calm as he paced the secure room deep within the embassy. I needed to verify certain elements first, Quincy said, knowing how weak it sounded. Verify? You're not an intelligence officer, Ziegler. You're a diplomatic courier who occasionally helps us with drop coordination. You exceeded your authority. The rebuke stung mostly because it was true. In the CIA hierarchy, Quincy occupied a gray area, officially a State Department employee, but one cleared to perform limited intelligence functions. Not a case officer, not a spy, but not entirely a paper pusher either. Woodlark is dead, sir. The Russians knew about his connection to us, and this Petrovich knew about Switchback. That suggests a significant penetration. Bennett stopped pacing. You're not telling me everything. Quincy hesitated. He mentioned a facility, a hidden American installation that cost $50 million to build. He implied it's been operational for decades. And I've never heard of any such facility. Have you? Bennett's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes shifted. What exactly did he say about this supposed facility? Just the cost, and that it was remarkable engineering that had remained hidden for a long time. Bennett sat down, rubbing his forehead. I'm pulling you off all operational activities, effective immediately. You'll continue your diplomatic cover duties only. Sir, with respect. This isn't a discussion, Ziegler. You compromised yourself by not reporting immediately. If you go to Schönbrunn tomorrow, you'll be doing so as a private citizen, and you'll face the consequences. And if Petrovich has genuine intelligence about a security breach, then he can find another way to deliver it. Quincy knew the conversation was over. He'd crossed a line and now he was being sidelined. As he left the secure room, he realized he faced a choice. Follow orders and abandon the meeting, or risk his career on the slim chance that Petrovich was offering something real. That night, alone in his apartment, he stared at the ceiling, sleepless. The Bay of Pigs had demonstrated the CIA's fallibility. What if there were other operations, other facilities, kept secret even from most of the agency? The Cold War had spawned compartmentalization to an extreme degree. Need to know had become an art form. By morning, Quincy had made his decision. The Neptune fountain stood at the foot of the hill in Schönbrunn's vast gardens, water cascading around mythological figures frozen in marble. Tourists snapped photos while tour guides recited the Habsburg history of Vienna's most famous palace. Quincy scanned the crowd, alert for surveillance, both Soviet and American. Petrovich appeared precisely at noon, dressed like any other tourist, complete with camera. You came alone, the Russian observed, falling into step beside him. Contrary to popular belief, we don't all travel in packs, Quincy replied. They walked away from the fountain, toward the less crowded areas of the garden. Your government has a remarkable talent for keeping secrets, Mr. Ziegler, even from itself. Cut the theatrics. What's this facility you mentioned? In 1950, as the Cold War intensified, your Strategic Air Command became concerned about continuity of government in the event of a Soviet first strike. They commissioned a series of hardened command bunkers. This much is known history. Go on. What isn't widely known is that one of these bunkers was built directly beneath a public landmark in Washington, D.C., a facility designed to house key congressional leaders during a nuclear attack. Quincy maintained his neutral expression. If such a facility existed, it would be impossible to keep secret for long. Yet they did. For over a decade, construction crews disguised as maintenance workers hollowed out a massive underground complex. The entrance was hidden in plain sight, inside a maintenance room that thousands of tourists walk past every day. The facility has remained operational and secret for almost 40 years. You still haven't said what landmark. Petrovich smiled thinly. The United States Capitol building. Quincy nearly laughed. That's absurd. The Capitol is one of the most public buildings in America. You can't hide a secret bunker there. The human mind sees what it expects to see, Mr. Ziegler. Your Capitol has dozens of rooms closed to the public, hundreds of maintenance areas that no one questions. Who notices another locked door marked "Authorized Personnel Only"? Despite his skepticism, Quincy felt a chill. If you know so much about this supposed bunker, why are you telling me? Why not your KGB superiors? Who says I haven't? Petrovich stopped walking. I have photographs, blueprints, and the names of the personnel who maintain the facility. I'm prepared to trade this information. For what? Safe passage to the United States. A new identity. $500,000. You're defecting? Quincy couldn't hide his surprise. Let's say I've reached a philosophical impasse with my employers. Petrovich checked his watch. You have 48 hours to arrange the preliminaries. After that, I'll take my information elsewhere. I'm not authorized. Then become authorized. Petrovich's voice hardened. Woodlark was my source. I had been running him for years, feeding selective scientific data to your agency while he provided me with far more valuable information. When Moscow discovered his connection to American intelligence, they ordered his elimination. I carried out those orders, but I kept certain materials for myself. The revelation left Quincy momentarily speechless. You killed Woodlark? Heart attacks are easy to induce with the right chemical compound. I've made my choice, Mr. Ziegler. Now you make yours. Petrovich handed Quincy a small paper bag. Evidence of my good faith. 48 hours. He walked away, leaving Quincy holding what felt like photographs inside the bag. You're either the bravest or the stupidest officer I've ever worked with, Bennett said as they examined the photographs Petrovich had provided. They showed detailed architectural drawings labeled Project Echo, dated 1952, with what appeared to be plans for a massive underground facility. These could be forgeries, Quincy said. They could be. Bennett tapped one photo showing a cross-section of what appeared to be multiple subterranean levels beneath the Capitol building. But why forge something so specific? If Petrovich wanted to create a convincing lie, he'd have claimed a facility under the Pentagon or White House, places where security already creates an aura of mystery. So you think it's real? Bennett leaned back. I think we need to find out. I've requested information from Langley about Project Echo. Interestingly, the initial response was that no such project exists in agency records. That could mean anything. Indeed. But I've also requested a priority check with the Defense Department and Congressional Oversight records. Bennett studied Quincy. In the meantime, I want you to maintain contact with Petrovich. If he's genuinely defecting, he represents a significant intelligence opportunity. And if it's a setup, then we'll have walked into it with eyes open. Bennett slid the photos back into their envelope. Set a meeting. Tell him we're interested but need proof the facility is still operational, not just a relic from the 1950s. As Quincy left the secure room, he felt the weight of responsibility settling onto his shoulders. Something about this whole situation felt wrong, not just the existence of a secret bunker but Petrovich's approach. KGB officers didn't simply walk away from their posts, especially not over philosophical differences. That evening, Quincy used the established emergency contact protocol, a classified advertisement in Vienna's main newspaper, to request a meeting with Petrovich. The response came faster than expected, delivered by a teenage boy who approached Quincy at his regular cafe the next morning. "The man said to give you this," the boy said, dropping a folded note on the table before disappearing into the crowd. The note contained a single line: "Natural History Museum, Mineral Collection, 3 p.m. The museum's mineral collection occupied a vast hall filled with display cases of crystals and gemstones. Despite the public setting, the space was quiet, with only a handful of visitors wandering among the exhibits. Quincy spotted Petrovich studying a display of quartz specimens. "You're being followed," Petrovich said without looking up. "2 men, American Embassy security. They've been with you since you left the diplomatic quarter." Quincy had spotted only one. "My superiors are interested in your information, but skeptical. Wouldn't you be? You claim there's a massive secret bunker under one of the most public buildings in America that's remained hidden for 40 years. Petrovich finally turned to face him. "Not just hidden, Mr. Ziegler. Actively maintained and periodically upgraded. The most recent renovation was completed in 1987, a communications overhaul to integrate with the new emergency broadcast systems. We need current proof. Recent photographs, access protocols, something to verify it's not just an abandoned Cold War relic." "Fair enough." Petrovich reached into his jacket and removed a small envelope. "This arrived by diplomatic pouch 3 days ago from our embassy in Washington. Current duty roster for maintenance personnel: all GS-15 government employees with Yankee White security clearances. Assigned to the architect of the Capitol's office but paid through a Defense Department black budget." Quincy took the envelope cautiously. "Why are you really defecting, Petrovich?" The Russian's face remained impassive. "My reasons are my own. But if you require a narrative for your superiors, tell them I've grown disillusioned with the Soviet system and fear the coming collapse." "And Woodlark? You murdered an innocent man." "There are no innocent men in our profession, Mr. Ziegler. Only useful ones." The cold pragmatism sent a chill through Quincy. "I'll convey your terms to my superiors. How do I contact you next?" "You don't. I'll contact you within 72 hours. Petrovich glanced past Quincy's shoulder. "Your security detail is getting anxious. I suggest you reassure them that the dangerous Russian hasn't kidnapped you." As Petrovich walked away, Quincy fought the urge to follow. Everything about this situation violated protocol. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that beneath Petrovich's story lay an even more complex truth. "We have confirmation." Bennett looked exhausted as he slid the secure cable across his desk 2 days later. "Project Echo exists, or at least existed. The facility was commissioned in 1952 by the Joint Congressional Committee on Atomic Energy as a congressional continuity of government bunker." Quincy skimmed the document. So Petrovich was telling the truth. Partially. The document confirms construction began, but contains no information about completion or current status. It's as if the project simply disappeared from official records sometime around 1959. Could it have been abandoned? Possibly. Or it could have been transferred to another agency, classified at a higher level, or completed under a different project name. Bennett rubbed his eyes. "I've requested satellite time to look for thermal signatures beneath the Capitol, but that will take days to arrange." "What about Petrovich's defection request?" Langley is interested, very interested, but cautious. His knowledge of Echo suggests access to high-level intelligence. We've received preliminary approval to proceed with extraction planning. Quincy leaned forward. Sir, something doesn't add up. If this facility has been secret for 40 years, why is a KGB officer in Vienna suddenly revealing its existence? And why to me specifically? You think you were targeted? I think my position, half diplomat, half intelligence, makes me a convenient cutout. If this goes wrong, I'm deniable. Bennett nodded slowly. Keep the rendezvous with Petrovich. Tell him we're prepared to discuss extraction details. Let's see how he responds. Petrovich's response came in the form of a dead drop, a hollow bolt in a public bathroom containing a microfilm. The decoded message was brief. Café Central. Tomorrow. Noon. Bring preliminary extraction plan. Café Central had once been the intellectual heart of Vienna, hosting Lenin, Trotsky, and Freud among its patrons. Now it served tourists alongside locals, its elegant interior a reminder of imperial splendor. Quincy arrived early, selecting a table with clear sightlines to both entrances. He ordered coffee and pastry, maintaining the appearance of a casual visitor while conducting counter-surveillance. Petrovich arrived precisely at noon, but he wasn't alone. A woman accompanied him, tall, striking, with auburn hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to authority. They made their way directly to Quincy's table. Mr. Ziegler, Petrovich said. This is Cassandra Foster. She will be joining our negotiations. Quincy stood, his training kicking in despite his surprise. Miss Foster. I wasn't aware we would have additional participants today. Few are aware of my participation in most matters, she replied, her American accent unmistakable as she took a seat. That's rather the point. Petrovich sat beside her. Ms. Foster represents certain interests within your government who prefer to remain officially uninvolved in our arrangement. Quincy felt the ground shifting beneath him. Which interests would those be? The kind that build secret bunkers beneath the capital and then keep them secret for 40 years, she said with a thin smile. The kind that would prefer said bunkers remain secret for 40 more. Your American intelligence, Quincy stated flatly. Let's say I work adjacent to traditional intelligence structures, she replied. My concerns are strictly domestic. Quincy looked between them. Would someone like to explain what's really happening here? Petrovich leaned forward. The bunker is real, Mr. Ziegler. Project Echo created a fully functional congressional evacuation facility beneath the Capitol building, capable of supporting 535 legislators and essential staff for up to 6 months in the event of nuclear war. What Petrovich has failed to mention, Cassandra interjected, is that in 1979, the facility was repurposed. It's no longer under military control. Then whose control is it under? Quincy asked. That's the question, isn't it? Petrovich said. The facility officially doesn't exist. No budget line item, no congressional oversight, no presidential authorization. Yet it remains fully staffed, maintained, and periodically upgraded. The implications dawned on Quincy slowly. You're suggesting a rogue operation within the U.S. government? Not rogue, Cassandra corrected. Autonomous. There are elements within your government that operate with minimal oversight by design. National security necessitates certain flexible arrangements. Why are you telling me this? Because in 3 days, Petrovich said, the current director of this autonomous group plans to use the facility for an operation codenamed Blackout. We believe this operation involves the temporary disruption of command and control systems within the U.S. government. Cassandra nodded. My superiors have become concerned about the director's increasingly independent actions. We need to document what's happening in that facility before Blackout begins. but we can't move officially without revealing the facility's existence. And why should I believe either of you? Quincy asked. Because I really am defecting, Petrovich said. Just not for the reasons I initially claimed. I've been working with MS. Foster's organization for the past 18 months, monitoring Soviet awareness of the facility. What exactly do you want from me? Your diplomatic passport and clearance give you access to channels we can't use, Cassandra explained. We need you to courier information from Vienna to Washington. Information that will allow us to lawfully access the facility before the operation begins. Quincy sat back, mind racing. If what you're saying is true, why not just alert the president? The CIA director? Because we don't know how high this goes, Cassandra said. The director has powerful allies. We need evidence first. And that evidence is? Petrovich removed a small metal cylinder from his pocket. This contains documentation of the facility's current operations, personnel, and the blackout protocols. It needs to reach a specific individual in Washington within 48 hours. Quincy looked at the cylinder. If I agree to this, I could be ending my career. Possibly worse. If you don't, Cassandra said quietly, and blackout proceeds as planned, the consequences could destabilize the entire Western intelligence apparatus at a crucial moment in the Cold War. The weight of the decision pressed down on Quincy. His entire career had been built on following rules, maintaining cover, being the reliable diplomatic attaché who occasionally helped with intelligence matters. This was far beyond his normal responsibilities. I need to consult with my superiors, he said finally. That's not possible, Cassandra replied. The moment you mention echo or blackout to your station chief, it will trigger automatic reporting protocols that will alert the very people we're trying to monitor. You're asking me to go rogue. I'm asking you to serve your country, she corrected. Sometimes that means working outside normal channels. Quincy stood up. I need time to think. You have until tomorrow morning, Petrovich said. After that, we'll find another way. As Quincy walked out of the cafe, he felt certain of only one thing. Whatever he decided, his life would never be the same. The decision came to him in the small hours of the morning. If Cassandra and Petrovich were telling the truth, the stakes were too high to ignore. If they were lying, he needed to discover why. He made contact through the emergency protocol they'd established, agreeing to transport the cylinder to Washington. The response came swiftly. A flight had been booked in his name, departing Vienna that evening under diplomatic cover. When he arrived at the airport, Cassandra was waiting. You'll need this, she said, handing him a sealed diplomatic pouch. The cylinder is inside, along with documentation identifying you as a State Department courier. Where's Petrovich? Already en route to a safe location. You'll need to make the delivery alone. As they walked toward the departure gate, Cassandra briefed him on the delivery protocol. When you land at Dulles, a man named Thomas Wyatt will meet you. Silver hair, scar on his left hand. The recognition phrase is Vienna sends its regards. And who exactly is Wyatt? Someone with the authority to access the facility legally. She stopped walking. One more thing, Quincy. Trust no one else, not even if they claim to be with my organization. Wyatt is your only contact. The flight to Washington was the longest 9 hours of Quincy's life. The diplomatic pouch sat secured in his briefcase, its contents potentially explosive. He ran through scenarios in his mind. What if he was being used as an unwitting courier for actual Soviet intelligence? What if the whole story about the bunker was an elaborate fiction designed to compromise him? By the time the plane touched down at Dulles, Quincy had convinced himself of every possible outcome, from heroic success to imprisonment for treason. The customs process was expedited thanks to his diplomatic status. As he emerged into the arrival hall, he scanned the crowd for a silver-haired man with a scarred hand. Instead, he saw two familiar faces, CIA officers from the counterintelligence division he recognized from briefings in Langley. They approached directly, credentials already displayed. "Mr. Ziegler, would you come with us, please?" The taller agent's voice was professionally neutral. "Is there a problem?" "Just a security matter that needs clearing up." "This way, please." Quincy felt the cold weight of dread in his stomach as he followed them to a private security room. Inside waited Roland Bennett, his station chief from Vienna who should have been 7,000 miles away. "Sir," Quincy said, genuinely surprised. "What are you doing here?" "Damage control," Bennett replied grimly. "You've been compromised, Quincy. We've been monitoring your communications with Petrovich and the woman calling herself Cassandra Foster." "I can explain." "There's nothing to explain. Petrovich is a known KGB disinformation specialist. The woman is his handler. There is no Project Echo, no secret bunker under the Capitol. It was an elaborate setup from the beginning." The room seemed to tilt slightly. "But the confirmation cable was intercepted and modified before you saw it. We allowed the deception to continue to identify their full network." Bennett gestured to the briefcase. "We need that diplomatic pouch." Quincy hesitated. "Sir, with respect, if there's even a chance they were telling the truth." "They weren't." Bennett's voice hardened. "The technical team has already analyzed the documents Petrovich provided. Sophisticated forgeries, but forgeries nonetheless." One of the counterintelligence officers stepped forward. "Mr. Ziegler, please surrender the pouch." Something in the officer's tone triggered Quincy's suspicions. He looked more closely at Bennett. His station chief appeared exhausted, but there was something else. Tension around his eyes that spoke of pressure beyond mere concern. "Vienna sends its regards," Quincy said suddenly. Bennett's expression didn't change, but the counterintelligence officer flinched almost imperceptibly. "What did you say?" Bennett asked. "Just something Cassandra mentioned." Quincy watched their reactions carefully. "She said I should only trust Thomas Wyatt." The name landed like a bomb in the small room. Both counterintelligence officers exchanged glances, and Bennett's face drained of color. "How do you know that name?" he demanded. Before Quincy could answer, the door opened. A silver-haired man with a distinctive scar across his left hand entered, flanked by two uniformed security officers. "That's enough, Roland," the newcomer said. "Your performance was convincing, but unnecessary." "Wyatt," Bennett acknowledged, his voice resigned. "Mr. Ziegler," Wyatt turned to Quincy. "I apologize for the theatrics, but we needed to verify your commitment. Vienna sends its regards." Quincy looked between Bennett and Wyatt, understanding dawning. "This was all a test?" "Not all," Wyatt said. "The facility is real. Project Echo exists. And Operation Blackout is indeed scheduled to commence in less than 36 hours. He extended his hand. "The pouch, please." Quincy handed over his briefcase. "Who exactly do you work for?" "An oversight committee with a very specific mandate," Wyatt replied. "The rest is need to know, and right now you don't." "And Cassandra?" "Petrovich. Ms. Foster is one of my best officers. Petrovich is indeed defecting, though his motivations are more complex than he suggested." Wyatt checked his watch. "We have limited time. A car is waiting to take us to the Capitol." The maintenance corridor beneath the Capitol Visitor Center was unremarkable. Concrete walls, pipes, electrical conduits. What made it remarkable was the unmarked metal door at the end, guarded by two men in maintenance uniforms who carried themselves with unmistakable military bearing. Wyatt flashed an ID card Quincy couldn't quite see, and the guards stepped aside. One of them entered a code on a keypad, and the heavy door swung open to reveal an elevator. The bunker was completed in 1959, Wyatt explained as they descended. originally designed to house Congress during a nuclear attack. By the 1970s, the strategic thinking had changed. Evacuating legislators to Mount Weather became the primary plan, and this facility was repurposed. Repurposed for what? Quincy asked. Continuity of intelligence operations. A secure location from which critical intelligence functions could continue even if Langley, Fort Meade, and other facilities were destroyed. The elevator stopped, and the doors opened onto a scene Quincy could hardly believe. A vast operations center stretched before them, multiple levels with dozens of workstations, communication equipment, and large display screens showing maps and data feeds. At least 30 personnel moved about the space, engaged in what appeared to be normal operations. "Welcome to Echo," Wyatt said. "For 40 years, this facility has remained one of America's most closely guarded secrets, unknown even to most CIA and NSA leadership." "How is that possible?" Quincy asked, still processing the scale of the operation. "Bureaucratic sleight of hand. The facility falls under the architect of the Capitol's budget for structural maintenance and preservation. The personnel are officially assigned to various intelligence agencies but seconded to special projects. The security protocols are handled through a compartmentalized system separate from normal classifications." They walked through the operations center, drawing curious glances from the staff. "And blackout?" Quincy asked. "That's why we're here." Wyatt led him to a smaller conference room where Cassandra Foster was waiting, along with several other serious-looking individuals. "Mr. Ziegler," she acknowledged, "thank you for your service." "I still don't understand my role in all this," Quincy said. Wyatt closed the door. "The current director of this facility, General Lawrence Hartwell, has exceeded his authority. Operation Blackout was designed as a contingency plan, a temporary communication shutdown to protect intelligence networks in the event of a massive security breach. But Hartwell has reconfigured it into something else entirely." Cassandra activated a display screen showing technical diagrams. "He's planning to use Blackout to isolate key command and control nodes within our intelligence infrastructure, essentially giving himself unilateral control over critical systems for up to 72 hours. Why? Because he believes Soviet penetration of our intelligence agencies has reached a critical point," Wyatt said. "He's convinced that only by temporarily severing normal communication channels can he identify and neutralize the supposed infiltration." "And you don't believe there's Soviet penetration?" Quincy asked. "Oh, there absolutely is," Cassandra said. "But Hartwell's approach is dangerously flawed. Blackout would create exactly the kind of vulnerability it's meant to prevent." Wyatt pointed to the diplomatic pouch. "The evidence Petrovich provided proves that the KGB is fully aware of Blackout. In fact, they've been subtly encouraging it, feeding disinformation to Hartwell that reinforces his paranoia." The implications were staggering. "So the Soviets want him to execute Blackout?" "Precisely," Cassandra said. "They've positioned assets to take advantage of the communication breakdown. The disruption would provide a 72-hour window during which they could access certain systems normally protected by layers of security." "Where is Hartwell now?" Quincy asked. "That's the problem," Wyatt said grimly. "He's barricaded himself in the command center with a team of loyalists. They've cut off external communications and are preparing to initiate Blackout at 0600 tomorrow." "And my role?" "You're an outsider, Mr. Ziegler," Cassandra explained. "Someone Hartwell doesn't know, with diplomatic credentials that give you a legitimate reason to deliver high-level communications. We need you to deliver a presidential order rescinding his authority." "A real order?" Quincy asked skeptically. "Very real," Wyatt confirmed. "The president was briefed 4 hours ago. He's authorized us to resolve the situation by any means necessary short of force." Quincy looked around the table. "And if Hartwell refuses the order?" The silence that followed was answer enough. The approach to the command center required passing through 3 separate security checkpoints, each more heavily guarded than the last. Quincy's diplomatic credentials and Wyatt's authority secured their passage through the first 2, but the final checkpoint, manned by Hartwell's loyalists, proved more challenging. No one enters without the general's express permission, the guard stated firmly. Wyatt stepped forward. This diplomat carries a direct communication from the President of the United States. Refusing to accept it constitutes insubordination. The guard hesitated, then picked up a secure phone. After a brief conversation, he nodded. The general will see the diplomat only. You remain here, sir. Quincy exchanged glances with Wyatt, who gave a nearly imperceptible nod. They had anticipated this possibility. Beyond the final checkpoint, an aide escorted Quincy to the command center, a reinforced room with multiple communication stations and a central conference table where General Lawrence Hartwell stood examining documents. He was older than Quincy expected, with the weathered face of someone who had spent decades fighting bureaucratic battles. Mr. Ziegler, Hartwell said without looking up, I understand you bring a message from the President. Quincy removed the sealed envelope from his briefcase. Direct from the Oval Office, sir. Eyes only. Hartwell took the envelope, broke the seal, and read the contents. His expression didn't change, but Quincy noticed his knuckles whitening as he gripped the paper. The President appears to be operating without full information, Hartwell said finally. Operation Blackout is essential to national security. We have confirmed Soviet penetration at the highest levels of our intelligence apparatus. The President is aware of your concerns, General. He's ordered a full security review, but Blackout has been deemed too disruptive and potentially counterproductive. Hartwell smiled thinly. Of course he would say that. The penetration has reached even the White House staff. He placed the order on the table. I'm afraid I must respectfully decline this directive. Sir, that constitutes. I know exactly what it constitutes, Mr. Ziegler. I've served this country for 40 years. I'm prepared to accept the consequences of my actions, but I will not allow Soviet agents to compromise our entire intelligence infrastructure while we stand by wringing our hands about protocol. Quincy realized that Wyatt's assessment had been correct. Hartwell wasn't going to back down. The general's conviction was too deep, his paranoia too entrenched. There's something you should see before you make your final decision, Quincy said, removing a second, smaller envelope from his pocket. This information came from a high-level KGB defector. It details Soviet knowledge of and plans for Blackout. Hartwell's eyes narrowed. What defector? Codenamed Pine Martin. He arrived in Washington yesterday with extensive documentation. The lie came easily. They had anticipated Hartwell's skepticism and prepared accordingly. The general took the envelope and examined its contents. The genuine intelligence Petrovich had provided, showing that the Soviets not only knew about Blackout but had been covertly encouraging it. As Hartwell read, his expression gradually shifted from suspicion to concern. This could be disinformation, he said, but with less certainty. It's been verified through 3 independent channels, Quincy replied. The Soviets want you to execute Blackout. They're positioned to exploit the communications gap. Hartwell sat heavily, suddenly looking every one of his 60-plus years. I've spent my life protecting this country from Soviet infiltration. The idea that I might be unwittingly serving their interests. No one questions your patriotism, General, but perhaps this operation needs to be reconsidered. After a long moment, Hartwell nodded. I'll need to verify this intelligence myself. Of course, Thomas Wyatt has the full file. He's waiting outside. Hartwell picked up the phone. Send in Wyatt. The crisis wasn't fully resolved. Hartwell would scrutinize every piece of evidence, question every source, but the immediate danger of blackout had passed. As Wyatt entered the command center, Quincy felt the tension begin to dissipate. They had prevented a catastrophic security breach without firing a shot. 1 week later, Quincy stood on the Capitol steps, looking out over the National Mall. Tourists streamed past him, completely unaware of the vast facility beneath their feet or how close it had come to triggering an intelligence disaster. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" Cassandra Foster said, appearing beside him. "I was wondering if I'd see you again," Quincy replied. "I wanted to personally deliver the news. General Hartwell has taken early retirement. The Echo facility remains operational, but with new leadership and enhanced oversight. And Petrovich? Enjoying his new life in Maryland under a different name. His information proved invaluable. There really was Soviet penetration, just not where Hartwell thought." Quincy nodded toward the Capitol dome. "And this place? Still a secret?" "Some secrets serve a purpose, Mr. Ziegler. The facility provides a critical continuity function. Its existence remains classified." "And my role in all this?" Cassandra smiled. "Officially, you delivered routine diplomatic communications and then returned to your post in Vienna. Unofficially, you've been added to a very short list of people we may call upon when normal channels are compromised." "I'm not sure if that's a promotion or a punishment. Perhaps a bit of both." She handed him a small envelope. "Your flight back to Vienna leaves tonight. Your regular duties resume tomorrow." As she walked away, Quincy looked again at the Capitol dome, gleaming white in the spring sunshine. Beneath its familiar silhouette lay a secret that had endured for 40 years, hidden in plain sight from the thousands who passed through its halls daily. He wondered how many other secrets lay buried beneath the visible structures of power, compartmentalized, denied, known only to those with the right clearances and code words. The Cold War was a conflict of shadows, he realized, fought not just across borders but within them, in hidden bunkers and secure facilities where decisions affecting millions were made by people whose names would never appear in history books. As he descended the Capitol steps to hail a taxi, Quincy Ziegler understood that he had glimpsed only the thinnest edge of that shadow world, and that some secrets would remain buried long after the Cold War itself had passed into history.